All right, so like imagine walking into a yarn spinner job interview, but you're not just prepared. You're like radiating confidence. You've got answers ready for whatever they throw at you.
Yeah.
And you even used AI to practice, you know,
Mhm.
to practice your delivery. That's what we're aiming for in this deep dive, turning you into an interview ace specifically for this job. We've got a ton of resources from RoleCatcher to help with this. Their career guides, interview guides, even the inside scoop on how to use their AI tools, all laser focused on landing you that yarn spinner role. So whether you're like just starting out in textiles or aiming for that next level up, think of this deep dive as like your personal playbook. Your playbook to interview success.
Yeah. And what's cool is that RoleCatcher, it's not just about interview tips, right?
All right.
It actually gives you that crucial industry context. And that's often what separates, the good candidates from the great ones.
Yeah, totally. Before we even think about the interview hot seat, let's make sure we're all on the same page about what a yarn spinner actually does. I was going through the RoleCatcher Career Guide, and honestly, it's way more than just spinning yarn.
Yeah, for sure. It's really the foundation of textile production. A yarn spinner takes those raw fibers, like cotton, wool, synthetics, and transforms them into yarn. There's continuous strands, we all know. They operate all this specialized machinery, make sure the yarn quality is top-notch, and they basically set the stage for everything that comes after. Weaving, knitting, the whole 9 yards.
The guide also talks about the work environment. Textile mills, factories, can be a pretty intense scene, huh?
Yeah, it can be pretty bustling. Often loud machinery, so you got to be comfortable in that kind of setting. The job often requires physical stamina too, and like super meticulous attention to detail, especially when you're troubleshooting those spinning machines.
Oh, speaking of details, the career guide has a whole section on industry trends. And one thing that really jumped out at me was sustainability. It seems like new materials and production methods are popping up all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. This is actually a key area where you can stand out in your interview. Showing that you're not just technically skilled, but you're also aware of this big industry shift towards eco-conscious practices.
Okay, so we've laid some groundwork. Now let's get down to business. Right.
Mm.
Nailing that interview. The RoleCatcher interview guide is awesome. It's packed with all kinds of potential questions. Spending time on these and really getting what they're asking is absolutely crucial.
Couldn't agree more. And what's so great about RoleCatcher is that they don't just, list questions. They give you insights into how to tailor your answers to specific job roles, which is so helpful. This is where their AI features come in. Imagine like practicing your responses on video and getting AI-driven feedback on your content and delivery. It's almost like having a personal coach helping you polish every part of your presentation.
That's amazing. Okay, so let's jump into some of these questions. First one, what inspired you to become a yarn spinner? Seems straightforward, but I bet it's easy to like fall into generic answers.
You hit the nail on the head. This is your chance to showcase, genuine passion. Don't just say like, I like textiles. Dig deeper. What fascinates you about yarn creation? Is it transforming raw materials, the technical challenge, or maybe the creative possibilities?
And that's where RoleCatcher's AI can really shine. You mentioned tailoring answers to specific roles. How does that actually work?
Okay, so imagine this. You're applying for a position at a company that's known for using, innovative recycled materials. RoleCatcher's AI can look at your response and suggest ways to emphasize your interest in sustainability. Circularity, right? So you're aligning your passion with the company's values.
That makes a lot of sense. All right, on to question 2. Describe your experience with different types of yarn. Feels like a chance to show off your knowledge, yeah.
For sure. But go beyond just listing yarn types. Say you've got experience with wool and cotton. Don't just say that. Talk about their unique properties. You could say something like, in my last role, I mainly worked with wool and cotton. I was fascinated by their different characteristics. Wool's warmth and resilience, cotton's breathability and softness. I even learned to adjust spinning techniques based on the fiber to get specific yarn qualities.
That's such a good example. And I love that RoleCatcher's Copilot AI, it can actually analyze your answer and point out if you're missing detail. It even suggests how to tailor it to the specific job description. It's like having an expert editor for your interview responses.
Yeah, it's a game changer. Speaking of tailoring responses, let's look at this next one. What is your experience with troubleshooting and maintaining spinning equipment? That seems pretty crucial, don't you think?
Definitely. I mean, these machines, they're the heart of the whole operation, right? A yarn spinner needs to keep them humming.
Exactly. Interviewers want to see that you can handle the pressure. So don't just say, oh, I'm good at fixing things. Give specific examples. What problems have you faced? How did you approach them?
Like, I could talk about a time when a machine was making inconsistent yarn, And I could explain how I figured out the problem, maybe a tension issue, and then the steps I took to fix it.
Exactly. And remember, details matter. If you use specific tools or techniques, mention them. Did you have to check the manuals? Did you collaborate with others? This shows not just your technical skills, but also your problem-solving approach and how you work, both independently and on a team.
The RoleCatcher Interview Guide even suggests mentioning anything you've done proactively to prevent issues. It's all about showing you're not just reacting, you're thinking ahead.
Right. It shows you're invested in keeping things running smoothly, which is super valuable for any yarn spinner. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Question 4 asks, how do you ensure the yarn you produce meets quality standards?
This feels like it's all about showing you care about details and that you're committed to, top-notch yarn.
Totally. Quality is king in textiles, right? So talk about the specific checks you do, whether it's visual inspection, measuring yarn count, or testing for strength and consistency.
Okay, so let's say the company I'm interviewing with, they specialize in high-end yarns for luxury garments and stuff. Would I tailor my answer to focus on quality checks that are relevant to that market?
That's exactly the kind of strategic thinking they're looking for. You could talk about your experience with fiber selection, really meticulous fiber selection, or maybe specialized testing for things like color fastness and pilling resistance, qualities that are super important for luxury fabrics.
Now, before we get into more questions, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier about RoleCatcher's insights into career stages for a yarn spinner. Can we take a quick detour to explore that?
Yeah, absolutely. Understanding that career path is super helpful. The RoleCatcher Career Guide, it's great. It breaks down the yarn spinner role into different stages. You got entry-level, junior, senior, and each one has typical responsibilities. They even have example profiles. It's like a roadmap for your career, Yeah. Helps you set expectations and figure out areas where you want to grow.
So helpful. It's like knowing how to level up in a video game, basically.
Yeah.
Let's say I'm going for an entry-level yarn spinner position. What kind of responsibilities can I expect?
Yeah.
And how do I highlight any relevant experience in the interview?
Okay, so the guide says that at entry level, you'd probably be focusing on operating and maintaining, basic machinery, monitoring yarn quality, and assisting with those prep processes we talked about.
Right.
Even if you haven't worked in textiles before, you can still draw parallels from other jobs. Have you worked in a production environment? Are you comfortable following really specific instructions? Are you someone who's all about the details? Those are all transferable skills that employers love.
That's a good point. I never thought about how. My experience working in a busy coffee shop could be relevant to a yarn spinner role, but now that you mention it, I can totally see the connections. The guide also mentions industry certifications. Are those a must-have for entry level?
They're not always mandatory, but certifications definitely show commitment, right? Like a commitment to the craft. And they can give you an edge over other candidates. RoleCatcher actually has a whole section on career advancement, and they talk about the value of always learning new stuff, whether it's formal certifications or just staying up to date on industry trends.
Okay, back to those interview questions. Question 5. Can you describe a time when you implemented a process improvement? This one seems like it's for more experienced people. What if I'm just starting out?
Don't worry. Even without direct experience as a yarn spinner, you can definitely use examples from other areas of your life. Think about times when you saw a problem and came up with a solution to make things better. School projects, volunteer work, even part-time jobs.
So if I work in retail, I could talk about a time when, I noticed a bottleneck
Yeah.
at the checkout, and then I, reorganized the queuing system to make things run more smoothly.
Exactly. That shows initiative, problem-solving skills, and that you're willing to improve things. All super valuable to employers. And don't forget, RoleCatcher's AI can help you tailor your answer to fit the context of yarn spinning, so it really resonates with the interviewer.
It's like having a translator, right? To bridge the gap between your past experience and this new role you're going for. Okay, next question. How do you stay up to date with industry developments and trends in yarn spinning? I guess this is where I can show off my passion, huh?
Exactly. It's not just about skimming a few articles anymore. You got to show that you're actively learning and engaging. Talk about specific publications you read, websites you follow, maybe even podcasts you listen to, Chuckles.
Okay, I get it. This podcast is a great resource. But seriously, it's about showing that you're committed to constantly learning and growing, which is super important in an industry as fast-paced as textiles.
And don't just name drop sources. Go deeper, What have you learned? Have you read anything about sustainable textile production? Have you looked into new eco-friendly fibers? Talk about how those insights have shaped your perspective, maybe even inspired some personal projects you've done.
I'm seeing a pattern here. It's not just about what you know. It's about how you connect the dots between what you know and your experiences, and then how it all relates to the job.
You got it. And RoleCatcher's AI tools are designed to help you do exactly that. Make sure your answers are targeted, insightful, and that they really make an impression. Speaking of impressive, let's tackle this next question. What is your experience with managing a team of spinners?
Whoa, that one's a bit of a curveball, especially for those of us going for entry-level positions.
Yeah.
But what if we do have some leadership experience, even if it's not directly related to yarn spinning?
That's where those transferable skills come in again. Think about the core elements of team management: motivation, delegation, conflict resolution, working towards a shared goal. Have you ever led a group project in school? Or coordinated a volunteer effort? Even managing a busy shift at your part-time job? All of that can provide some valuable examples.
So if I led a fundraising team, say, for a local charity, I could talk about how I motivated volunteers, delegated tasks based on their strengths, and made sure everyone was working together effectively.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to get specific. What were some of the challenges you faced? How did you overcome them? What were the outcomes? Remember, quantifiable results always make a bigger impact.
I'm realizing that each answer is a chance to tell a story,
Yeah.
to paint a picture of your skills and experiences in a way that really connects with the interviewer. And RoleCatcher's AI can help you polish those stories, make sure they're clear, concise, and memorable.
It's like having a storytelling coach right there in your pocket. All right, let's move on to a more technical question. Can you describe different spinning techniques and their advantages and disadvantages?
The RoleCatcher guide mentions, like, ring spinning, open-end spinning, air jet spinning. It's a lot. How do we even approach this one without, getting lost in all the technical jargon?
Don't worry. First, just focus on the techniques you're most familiar with. Even if you've only learned about them in theory, you can still show that you understand the basics, right? Explain the principles behind each technique. And then this is key talk about their pros and cons, like how those advantages and disadvantages play out in different situations.
So, for example, I could say that ring spinning, while it's slower, it makes higher quality yarn, so it's perfect for luxury fabrics. While open-end spinning, that's faster and more efficient, so it's better for high volume production, everyday textiles and stuff.
Exactly. And if you can link those techniques to the company you're interviewing with, even better. Say they specialize in sustainable textiles. You could mention air jet spinning because it uses way less energy and water compared to other methods.
Starting to get it. You got to connect all the pieces, right? Understanding the industry, the company, what the role needs. That's how you tailor your answers. And show them you really get it.
Exactly. It's about going beyond the surface, showing them you've done your research. Okay, let's move on to a question that a lot of people find tricky. Can you describe the process of preparing raw materials for spinning?
Okay, this one sounds like a deep dive into
Yeah.
the nitty-gritty of textile production. Where do I even start?
Think of it like a step-by-step journey. You start with that raw fiber, maybe it's cotton, straight from the field, or wool, freshly sheared from sheep. Then you walk them through each stage: cleaning, carding, drawing, combing. Each process refines those fluffy fibers a little more until they're ready for spinning.
The RoleCatcher Career Guide actually shows a diagram of this process, which is really helpful. It also mentions that automation and robotics are becoming more common. Should I mention that in my answer?
Absolutely. Showing that you're aware of how technology is changing the industry is a huge plus. You could even say that you've learned about these advancements through online courses or industry publications. Shows that you're proactive and always learning.
So instead of just describing the old school manual processes, I can also talk about how robots are making things more efficient.
Exactly. And you can take it even further. Talk about how automation affects the role of the yarn spinner. How do your skills and expertise complement these new technologies? That shows you're not just aware of the changes, you're actually thinking critically about your place in this evolving industry.
This is all making so much sense. It's about showing that you've got the traditional knowledge, the technical skills, and that you're ready to adapt to new tech. And RoleCatcher's resources, especially their AI tools, they give you the perfect way to hone those skills and really refine how you approach interviews.
It's like having a secret weapon. Now, before we finish this deep dive into interview prep, we can't forget about one crucial thing: going beyond the basics.
Ooh, that sounds interesting. What do you mean by beyond the basics?
It's those extra efforts that show you're truly passionate about a career in yarn spinning. Think networking, building a portfolio, maybe getting involved in industry events or organizations.
Okay, let's break that down. The RoleCatcher Guide mentions things like attending trade shows and joining professional organizations. How can I use those to my advantage?
Trade shows are awesome for immersing yourself in the industry. You can see the latest innovations, connect with potential employers, even get a feel for different company cultures. And joining professional organizations not only keeps you up to date on trends, but it also gives you networking opportunities and access to all kinds of resources.
So it's like expanding your network and your knowledge beyond just applying for a single job. Shows you're in it for the long game.
Exactly. And then there's a portfolio. Imagine showing off your yarn spinning projects, the different fibers and techniques you've tried, maybe some creative pieces you've designed.
That's a great idea. I could include pictures of my work, right?
Yeah.
And highlight the different textures and colors I've gotten with different fibers and spinning techniques, like bring my passion to life.
Precisely. It's about showcasing your dedication to the craft, your creativity, and that you're willing to go the extra mile. And guess what? RoleCatcher even has tools to help you create a professional-looking online portfolio so you can easily share your work with potential employers.
It's amazing how they've thought of everything. We've covered so much in this deep dive. Understanding the yarn spinner role, mastering those tricky interview questions, even exploring how to go above and beyond to stand out.
And let's not forget about RoleCatcher's AI-powered tools. They play such a huge role in all of this. From tailoring your answers to giving you feedback on your delivery, it's like having a personalized support system every step of the way.
It's like a cheat code to unlock your full potential. Now, before we wrap things up, I want to touch on something that's been weaving through our conversation. The future of yarn spinning.
Ah, yes, the big question. Technology. We've talked about automation and robotics, but what other trends are shaping the future of this industry, and how can our listener prepare for these changes?
That's a great question. And I think it's the perfect way to end this deep dive. Ready to take a peek into the future of yarn spinning.
It's a constantly evolving industry, textiles, and yarn spinning is no exception. We've talked about sustainability and automation, but there's so much more happening.
The RoleCatcher Career Guide mentioned sustainability as a big thing. What does that actually mean for yarn spinning in the future? Are we talking about eco-friendly fibers and production?
Exactly. Yarn spinners of the future, they're going to need to know all about recycled materials, organic cotton, and using less water and energy. It's not just about technical skills anymore. It's about understanding the environmental impact of your work.
So it's not just making yarn, it's making it responsibly.
Right. And this is something you can definitely talk about in your interview. Any experience you have with sustainable practices, even if it's not from textiles.
Like if I volunteered at a community garden or something, I could talk about how that taught me about composting, water conservation, the importance of minimizing waste.
Exactly. It shows you're thinking about the bigger picture, that you're aligned with this move towards eco-conscious practices. And remember, RoleCatcher's AI can help you, weave those experiences into your answers. Highlight your commitment to sustainability in a way that connects with employers.
Like having a personal PR agent, right? Okay, now for the big question. Automation and robotics. Are robots going to take over all the yarn spinner jobs?
It's unlikely that robots will completely replace human yarn spinners. Textile production is complicated. And there's still a need for human expertise, especially when it comes to quality control, creative problem solving, those nuanced judgments that machines just can't do yet.
That's good to hear. But it sounds like yarn spinners will need to adapt and work alongside these new technologies.
For sure. Being comfortable with automated systems, knowing how to program them, maintaining them, these skills will be super valuable. Imagine yarn spinners not just running machines, but collaborating with robots, optimizing processes, making sure that human craftsmanship and technology work together seamlessly.
So the yarn spinner of the future, they're tech-savvy, eco-conscious, and they still have those core skills, precision, that eye for quality. It's a dynamic role. You got to have both the traditional knowledge and be open to innovation.
And that's what makes it so exciting. This industry isn't standing still. It's evolving, pushing boundaries.
Yeah.
And it's got tons of opportunities for those who are willing to learn and adapt.
I think we've covered a ton today. We explored the yarn spinner role, those tough interview questions. We even looked into the future of the industry. And through it all, we've seen how RoleCatcher's resources can really help, especially their AI tools.
Yeah, they offer such a unique combination of Industry insights, practical ways, and cutting-edge technology. It can totally change how you prepare for interviews.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you want our listener to remember?
Preparation is key, but it's not just about memorizing answers. It's about understanding the industry, connecting your skills and experience to what the role actually needs, and showing your passion, your willingness to learn and grow. And don't forget to use AI to help you refine your approach, tailor your message, and present yourself as the perfect candidate.
Great advice. And here's one last thought for our listener. As technology keeps advancing, how will the yarn spinner role change even more? What new skills will people need to succeed in this evolving industry?
That's a fantastic question, and it could even be a good conversation starter in your interview, showing that you're not just thinking about getting the job, but also about the future of the industry. That'll really impress them.
Well, that's all for today's deep dive. We hope you're feeling ready to tackle that yarn spinner interview. Head over to RoleCatcher, create your free account, and start exploring all their amazing resources. Your dream job is out there. Good luck.